Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome to Vampire Wednesday. I'm going to recap both Bram Stokers Dracula up to page about 92, I think, and then the first 7 issues of Tomb of Dracula, because that's what I've been reading this week. What? Happened to my... There we go. My notes. Let's start with Bram Stokers. As you may or may not know, it's probably been a while since some of you have read that. I am curious to see if everybody's reading along, 13 pages a day till we get to the end of October to finish Bram Stokers. As you recall from last time, Jonathan Harker has been hired by Dracula to set up some properties and acquire some properties and some other businesses in London, but he's had Jonathan come out to Transylvania to show him around his castle, unbeknownst to Jonathan, not for any good intentions whatsoever. He's paid for his expenses to get him to Transylvania, and he's hired a strange coachman to get him there, although it turns out that strange coachman may have been Dracula all along, because when he meets him, they shake hands, and the grip and the icy touch and things like that are kind of disturbing. And then he shows him around the castle, makes sure he's wined and dined, and instantly Harker notices that the Count never eats or drinks and is always away during the daytime. So he'll find out later that he's actually sleeping, and he eventually finds out that Dracula's actually like doing all the cooking and the cleaning and the making of the beds and everything all by his lonesome. And he warns Harker to never sleep outside the bedroom, because the one time he does disobey that order when the Count is out doing business or feeding or whatever, he bumps into 3 of Dracula's girlfriends who try to, feast on him, and Dracula comes in, saves him in the nick of time. And one night Harker notices, he's looking out the window and notices that Dracula's climbing up the walls like a freaking spider, and he's like, okay, this is just beyond the pale. And when next time Dracula leaves, he does the same thing. He tries to climb up and finds Dracula's room, because all the other doors in the place are locked except for the few places Harker's allowed to go, including the library and the bedroom and the study and the dining room, I think. And he discovers Dracula's coffin where he sleeps, and a pile of dusty gold from centuries long gone. And eventually he, gets in a bit of trouble, and Dracula gets mad at him and more or less locks him in his room. And then it cuts to his fiancée, Jonathan's fiancée, Mina Harker, or before she's Harker, obviously, writing letters back and forth to her best friend Lucy about this wonderful day she had where 3 young men all proposed to her in the same day, and 2 of the men, I think, turn out to be the other characters that are going to be Jonathan's best friends and allies in the fight against Dracula. But the third guy to propose to her, of course, is Jonathan Harker, and of course she says, I will, in the letters to Lucy, and that's where it ended off. The letters to Lucy were kind of interesting to see how Bram Stoker thought of women, and how he thought women thought and wrote, behaved amongst themselves when nobody was looking. It was charming, but a little, a lot dated, honestly. But that was Bram Stokers Dracula, and I will pick up that book and finish, reading. I'll read another 13 pages a day. I'd love to hear how you guys are doing in that little challenge down below in the comments section to see if you're enjoying it. If you've done like me and read a little past where you were supposed to, got a little off track, it's okay. As long as you get to the end on October 31st, that's what I'm hoping, so that you've got a little something every day, a little horror, a little mystery, a little uncanny story. Then on to Tomb of Dracula. I'm having a blast with this. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Also, it's dated, but it's only dated from the 70s. But the next chapter is a chapter about this woman, Eleanor or Ilsa. Oh gosh, I forgot her name. I'm sorry, but she's an aging model who buys Dracula's castle out from under Drake somehow, and she's aging and she's really vain and she wants her youth back. And she read in Bram Stokers Dracula that when he feeds on the living, he reverts to his younger self. But what she doesn't realize is that he only reverts back to when he first became a vampire. And she lures Dracula to her estate with a deal. She keeps him at bay with a cross, and she tells him about this magical mirror that she's acquired that will transport Dracula back to the previous century and other places that the various other brother and sister mirrors, if you will, are attached to. And with the right ritual, you can go back in time and do that sort of thing. Dracula, agrees, but of course he's keeping something from her and she's keeping something from him. And the deal is, she'll give him the information if he'll make her a vampire so that she can stay forever young. But what she doesn't realize is she's already pretty old, so she's only going to revert back to that state of her life where she's in her 50s or 60s or whatever it is. And Dracula doesn't realize that without the other words and parts of the ritual, he might never be able to go back and forth as he so desires, which we'll get to that in a moment. And he ends up taking Taj, Rachel Van Helsing, Dr. Van Helsing's daughter, her assistant Taj, this guy from India. He can't speak, he's a big burly guy, and Dracula grabs him and takes him into the mirror because he doesn't know when or if he'll be able to find somebody else to feed on, which is, kind of pragmatic but kind of weird. You just think that he would just take his chances. But he ends up in a realm full of demons with a silver road that leads to a temple, and he's dragging Taj along with him, and eventually he finds another mirror, and it sends him to his own time where Dr. Van Helsing is still alive, and there's some adventures there, but eventually everybody gets back to the 1970s, and the aging model, after her first kill, just despises the whole process and wants to, just end it all, and has Rachel with the crossbow. An interesting side note, white thorn oak or something like that is apparently just absolutely deadly to vampires. Even a nick will kill them. It doesn't have to be through the heart, but they do have it was interesting to see that they do understand that you have to cut off the head and fill the mouth with holy water or communion wafers or some such instead of just a arrow through the heart. That's why Dracula was able to come back a century later when Clifton Graves, his last name was Graves, by the way, Frank Drake's best friend, turned Renfield. When he pulled the stake out, Dracula came back because no one finished off the ritual, which they find out later is part of the process. And then the next big scheme of Dracula's is to lure Frank to an oubliette in a forgotten cathedral off in the wilderness, and he's going to leave them there. He traps Rachel and Frank down in the pit, and there they admit to their undying love for one another because they're about to die, but then someone saves them. I'm not going to spoil that surprise. They get out, and Frank Drake's, like, oh man, I can't fall in love with her because, we're going to hunt vampires, and I'm part Dracula's blood, so maybe I'll become a vampire. It's kind of corny, but it's kind of sweet as well. And then the final scheme, taking place through issue 6 and 7, Dracula does something really nasty, which is he hypnotizes a bunch of school children to use as his army against Frank and Rachel and Taj in another kind of confrontation where they can't fight the kids because they can't hurt the kids because they're not vampires yet. But fortunately, a new friend of theirs, Quincy Harker, the descendant of Jonathan Harker and Mina Harker, their grandson or something, a man who's been fighting vampires his whole life, now confined to a wheelchair, manages to nick Dracula with one of his wheelchair firing combat wheelchayer. Yes, this is the origin of the combat wheelchair, as far as I can tell. 1971, 1972, maybe even just 1970. I'll have to go check, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The children are closing in on Rachel and Frank and Quincy and Taj, and Quincy fires his combat wheelchair, and a bunch of the white thorn oak darts miss, but one hits him, and Dracula's all wounded, and that's where it ended, with a nice cliffhanger. There's been a couple of nice cliffhangers so far throughout this volume, and I'm only in issue 7, and I'm loving it. The artwork is stellar. Not quite Bernie Wrightson, but what was his name? Gene Colan. Written mostly by Marv Wolfman. Is the name right there, right? Marv Wolfman. That's just such a great comic book author name. And Gene Colan, his art sometimes is really incredible. There was even one image of Rachel where I could swear he was drawing Britney Spears in her early days. It was just like, wow, that's, he's a really good artist. So just put it there. And, so far, I haven't read anything in this that broke the comic code even for back then, except the vampires and werewolves and things like that. It's all been, none of the kills, the blood draining has been too gory. Sure, it's happened multiple times, like a couple of times an issue, but other than that, it's not really, I wouldn't get too worked up if my kid had read this when he was, preteen, but still might have given some other younger kids nightmares. And anyways, I'm glad they rescinded the comic code or lessened its parameters and allowed us to finally get this. And let's see, I've still got enough to last me throughout the month, and then I'll probably hold off and break out volume 2 next October. But let me know if you guys read this when you were growing up or later on in life, what you thought of it. I'm really digging it. There's a lot of really cool stuff, especially to my friends over at Barrels and Borderlands, who are getting ready to go into Palace of the Vampire Queen from back in 1972, 74. There's a lot of really neat vampire lore and little nuggets that you can mine from this to help, when you're doing that. Maybe even some of this lore made its way into Vampire the Masquerade or any of the other vampire games out there. But let me know what you think. I will be back tomorrow with something. I'm not sure what I'm doing, if we're doing the book club or not, but I'll have something for you tomorrow morning or Thursday morning, I should say, and probably Thursday evening. But until then, and as always, happy trails.